Are you struggling for consistency in your sim racing? Does your iRating look like a roller coaster? If so, we have good news for you. The way to get more consistent is to first understand what you're doing differently than the professionals. And VRS is the answer. With our competitive subscription, you will have the telemetry, setups, tutorials, and everything else you need to fully analyze your driving. Our data packs and the ability to compare your driving with the best in the world will show you exactly where to adjust your inputs, change your driving line, and shave seconds off of your lap times. And our powerful and precise Direct Force Pro wheelbase and precision pedals are being used by some of the world's best drivers. All these champions agree that VRS hardware is not just the best on the market, it's also priced well below the competition. So if you're looking to upgrade to direct drive and the best pedals in sim racing, VRS is your answer. If you want to get better, get faster, and make it happen sooner rather than later, you owe it to yourself to find out why so many people are switching to VRS. You'll be so glad that you did. Visit www.virtualracingschool.com and learn why the best use VRS.
Well, hello and good evening, everybody. Welcome back to Apex Racing TV, and welcome back to the Operation eMotorsports Racing League. This is round number 7 of the season, coming to you tonight from Sonoma. My name is Ron Mons. Joining me in the commentary booth is Charles Bichelle, and in the virtual production hall we have our old buddy Josh Wilkie. And now, Charles, after a quick 1-week break, we now close this season off with 2 more races. The first tonight at Sonoma, a track which is really underrepresented in the iRacing world. This track can put on some pretty good racing, though. It's been a little while since we've done a broadcast around this racetrack, but with the GT3 and LMP2 competitors that we have in this series, I'm expecting some pretty good racing tonight. What do you think?
Yeah, I think so. I think we will see a few issues because, as you said, it is quite underrepresented. Just not a lot of action here. Obviously, NASCAR. This is one of their 3 or 4 road courses they rotate through. It's been one for many years. IndyCar, of course, runs here as well. So to get these GT3 cars and these LMP2s around this track is going to be a bit of a challenge for these drivers. But I expect some good racing. I think we'll see probably a few more mistakes than we normally would, just because a lot of people don't get tons and tons of time on this track. But I think they'll adapt pretty quickly.
And plus, I think just the nature of this racetrack kind of leads to a bit more mistakes than some of the other tracks that we've visited thus far this season. We've had a fantastic schedule of races, and it kicked off all the way back at the end of August. I believe it was August the 27th, unless my memory is failing me, which it very well may. Kicked the season off at the Daytona International Speedway road course, and we visited tracks like Road America, Canadian Tire, Watkins Glen, Road Atlanta, Spa 2 weeks ago. Took a 1-week break for the very entertaining Multoul Petit Le Mans. I don't even know if that's the name that they give it nowadays. And then we're going to close this season off with a race tonight at Sonoma. And in 1 week's time, we're going to close off this season on October the 22nd at Sebring. And honestly, looking through that schedule of tracks that we've visited thus far this season, Charles, I feel like Sonoma is really only in a category of 2 with Canadian Tire Motorsports Park in terms of racetracks where these drivers really have no break whatsoever.
Yeah, it's a really tight track. It's fairly long so it's not like it's a small track, but it's a very tight track. Lots of elevation changes, especially in the first half of the lap, as you can see here as we're looking at Gregory Meismer. Lots of blind apexes, blind corners. So you really got to spend some time on this track, just getting the feel of the track down and getting it used to knowing where your turn-in points are going to be, where your braking points are going to be, how much you can use to brake, because obviously these cars, especially with the LMP2s, as we're watching now during qualifying, no anti-lock brake, so the car, come crest these hills, get light, have a tendency to lock up, and then you become more of a passenger than a driver till you can get that corrected. As we come down the straightaway, coming down into turn 7, it's a little bit different. This is the NASCAR circuit, so instead of it being a very tight hairpin, it's more of a double apex right-hander. So that's just because of the cars that normally run on that, so they'll make a little bit of a difference. But it's going to be a good place to make a move and try and get a pass done.
And it has been an absolutely fantastically entertaining season thus far. Some beautiful tracks that we visited, some beautiful racing as well, and some awesome storylines to follow heading into the final 2 races of this season. But I think at this point in the broadcast, we should probably talk about Operation Motorsports because, Charles, we were kind of talking about this before the broadcast. I'm not a military guy. I feel like if I went to the military, I'd end up the way of George Carlin and probably get court-martialed about 3 times. But it's been fantastic to follow this season and learn a whole lot about Operation Motorsports, which is a veteran-led and operated 501c3 nonprofit foundation based in Raleigh, North Carolina and Bryan, Ontario, Canada, serving American and Canadian service members and veterans. Operation Motorsports is based on 3 core values: team, identity, and purpose, and supports the recovery of medically retiring or retired service members affected by military service through motorsports opportunities. Operation Motorsports' motto is one at a time. So if you ever see hashtag one at a time, now you know that behind that hashtag is an absolutely wonderful cause supporting veterans. Veteran recovery opportunities, utilizing motorsports opportunities, veteran recovery opportunities, and still a sense of team, identity, and purpose. Veteran recovery opportunities through the lens of diversionary therapy, motorsports immersion, and academy programs. Veteran recovery through motorsports one at a time. Visit operationmotorsports.org to learn more. Operation Motorsports has been absolutely fantastic to follow throughout this season. This season has been awesome, and the work that Operation Motorsports does behind the scenes to help out veterans, it's been fantastic to hear a lot of the stories and get to have a chat with some of these drivers when everything is said and done from these fantastic races that we have, and hear some of the stories about how just being a part of this series has helped them out so much. And Charles, considering that you're a veteran yourself, I feel like you're probably the one more qualified than I am to talk about the wonderful people at Operation Motorsports.
Yeah, well, we talk about them week in and week out. Just a fantastic group of people. Obviously, I've doing the broadcast, I was the first guy to volunteer to come in and broadcast because I'm such a fan of the work that these people do, for the veteran community. And it's a lot of them are veterans, and they're veterans helping veterans, which is exactly the brotherhood / sisterhood that we get instilled with when we're in. So it's just one of those that just carries on back into our civilian lives, and just really, really happy to be part of the broadcast. And and I sit here and just kind of think about, man, I should be out there racing with these guys again. But I'm really enjoying sitting up here and talking about the racing as well.
Hey, Charles, if you want to go out there on the racetrack for the season finale, you're more than welcome to, just as long as you're buying me a bag of cough drops when everything is said and done. This season is absolutely brilliant, and we're seeing these drivers run around this racetrack, which is a wild ride in the world of motorsports, especially in these LMP2 cars, which outside of the last time IndyCar ran here back in 2019, an LMP2 car is pretty fast around this racetrack, and we're seeing these drivers tackle the challenge. This is Skylar Vickery, who's off the back of a victory in the last round of this championship at Spa. Just his second victory in the Pro LMP2 category this season. He's currently behind Connor Parise, who's been another 2-time race winner from this season, kicked the season off with a good run at Daytona, then won the second race of the season at Road America and picked up another victory at Watkins Glen for round 4. But outside of that, he has not visited victory lane since, but we could see Connor Parise maybe sneak his way back up into victory lane. Currently on the provisional pole as it stands at the moment in this section of the LMP2 qualifying session. Friendly reminder to anyone tuning into the series for the first time, tuning into these broadcasts for the first time on Apex Racing TV. Firstly, welcome along. Hope you're enjoying the show and hope you enjoy the great racing that we have tonight. But here's how the qualifying works in this series. Got a 20-minute long open qualifying session, which is split up in half, essentially. First 10 minutes reserved for the LMP2s, and the final 10 reserved for the GT3s. In the midst of this LMP2 session right now, and looking pretty close with a lot of these drivers.
Yeah, absolutely. I was right on board with Connor Parise during practice, just kind of getting a feel, because I'm kind of with you. This is one of the fastest cars we would see on this track. And I was watching, just kind of riding in the cockpit, riding along, and they're not getting into top gear until that backstretch. Once they clear the S's after turn 8, that's the only time they're getting up into 6th gear. Everything else has been really short shifts, trying to keep the RPMs low, keep torque, to keep the tires from spinning, to try and get the car around the corners. And then you get that one little flat out blast as we see Greg Meismer working his way down through there. About right there is where you're getting up into top gear, and that's it for the lap. And they're still 11 seconds faster than the GT3 cars. So they've got their work cut out for them, because it's one of those tracks that, as we said, very tight. They're going to be very patient. They're going to be very cautious that they don't burn those tires up.
I gotta say as well, Charles, the pit entry and exit around this racetrack is going to be very much sketchy for these drivers, and in these 45-minute long races, that is a big factor in deciding who's going to sneak away with the victory. But pace and qualifying matters as well, and we're coming towards the end of this LMP2 portion of this qualifying session. Gotta say, Gregory Meismer, who we're riding on board with, had a fantastic view heading through the first few corners around this racetrack, him sawing out the wheel in the number 75 ZFG racing car. Currently in second as Tyler Gilmet jumps in front of him. That pro beneficiary LMP2 category has been fantastically entertaining to follow thus far this season, because in the 6 races that we've had, both of those drivers have scored 3 victories a pop. Started off with a little bit of Tyler Gilmet dominance. He won the first 2 races of the season at Daytona and Road America, but then following that, Gregory Meismer scored 3 straight victories. However, that streak was broken 2 weeks ago at Spa, with Tyler Gilmet sneaking his way back up into victory circle. So those 2 drivers on 3 victories apiece thus far this season, and that is going to create a tantalizing prospect when it comes to talking about that Pro Ben LMP2 championship fight. But as the GT3 competitors make their way out onto the circuit, we should probably talk about the fact that the last round of the championship was 2 weeks ago, as we mentioned, taking a small little break for Petit Le Mans. A lot of the drivers that you see in this series, they're not just sim racers. Operation Motorsports has been fantastic in providing a lot of these drivers with real-life motorsports opportunities. However, Operation Motorsports would not be able to do that if it weren't for one of the other fantastic partners that we have, that being CrowdStrike, because CrowdStrike is a proud partner with Operation Motorsports to advance their mission of empowering military veterans through motorsports. Their support extends far beyond traditional funding, addressing critical business needs and enabling Operation Motorsports to focus on key engagements, outreach, and expanding veteran opportunities. This foundational support ensures that Operation Motorsports can effectively deliver its programs and create meaningful experience for veterans in the racing world. Additionally, this partnership facilitates the integration of veterans into prominent roles within IMSA and the SRO, including crew member positions and marketing team positions as well. CrowdStrike also engages in employee resource groups and volunteers in supporting Operation Motorsports at various SRO races, and also contributing to the building and distribution of veteran and family care packages. This collaborative effort enriches the motorsports community while providing valuable career and support opportunities for veterans. We'd like to thank CrowdStrike for being one of the fantastic partners with Operation eMotorsports and making all the stuff that happens outside of the sim possible. We've talked about George Kurtz, the CEO of CrowdStrike, a lot, and it's finally time that we actually remember his name. Well, I at least remember his name for these broadcasts. I'll be brutally honest, folks. I was broadcasting most of the day for Petit Le Mans, so I wasn't able to do too much into the race outside that very exciting finish that I will not spoil for anyone who is not tuned into that race. But I can't really remember if George was running out there, but always nice to see the CEO of a company like CrowdStrike getting involved in sports car racing as well, and plus all the stuff they do with Operation Motorsports as well.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you know, that's really some of the that's one of the things that I like about road racing, especially IMSA, is you know, and you know, as well as WEC, is the gentleman driver, right? The guy that's done well. Oh, as we see Tyler Manning just slide off the track, looks like he got hooked on the curb there. I will say that he was I think he was the fastest guy in practice in the GT3 class. So it was very tight between him and Colby Ull. But yeah, the gentleman driver is, you know, one of those things that's really cool. It's a really cool thing that you can, you know, do well in life and have a passion. And so, you know what, I'm going to put my money into my passion. I'm going to start myself a race team up, and we're going to go racing, and I'm going to get better at it. And so it's awesome. You know, there's some great drivers. You mentioned George Kurtz, but I think my favorite of those is Ben Keating. Is a man that's, you know, in his mid 50s and has won countless endurance racing championships, and he's a car salesman. I mean, basically, that's how he made his money in the car business. And he says, you know what, I like running race cars, so I'm going to go do that. And it's probably one of the best drivers out in the field to be somebody who doesn't do it full time.
It's always nice to see the story surrounding Ben Keating, because some of the first times that I ever really sat down and watched the 24 Hours of Daytona every single season, the broadcast crew always liked to keep up the story surrounding Keating running. He always used to do double duty with the LMP2 car that he ran, as well as a GT3 car. So even some of those gentlemen drivers do a pretty good job out there on the racetrack. Ben Keating, always a pretty good storyline to follow come time for those big IMSA endurance races. And I believe he also was part of the Corvette team that ended up sneaking away with the victory in the 24 Hours of Le Mans, I think, back in 2023. And speaking of one of those Corvettes, this is Nolan Uke, one of the newcomers to this series, joining the season with only 2 races left to go, but getting some valuable experience behind the wheel of the number 18 GT3 race car. Heading his way across the line now, we'll see if he improves on his lap time. Currently qualified, I think we may have a slight issue there. He is not a pro LMP2 driver. I believe he would be in one of the GT3 classes, unless my eyes are very much deceiving me and Corvette has decided to make an LMP2 car that looks very similar to how their GT3 cars look, but he's currently qualified at a 1-minute 33.642. But looking at those GT3 classes, Colby Ull in the open class, he has been absolutely dominant. There's no other word to describe it. He has a clean streak of victories thus far. He has gone 6 for 6 in Open GT3, and even in the beneficiary GT3 category, it's been a pretty good story surrounding Ian Carney, who I gotta say, even though he has 4 victories thus far this season, he's currently qualified in 3rd in the Ben GT3 class. So Ian Carney been pretty dominant this season, but looking like he's running into a small little bit of a hiccup here at Sonoma. And also looks like there's a little bit of damage on the front end of that 54 Porsche.
Yeah, that could just be from the curb strikes. He's looked like he was pretty looks like he's been aggressive with the curbs. And yeah, it wouldn't surprise me. Well, I don't know. Actually, that looks like maybe he's bent that in a little more than just a curb strike. It's a little damage on the nose. So he may have had a brush with the wall and just said, you know what, I'm just going to go out and keep running around and see what I can come up with. It's not necessarily a very aero dependent track. So it's one of those that it's going to be more of a just getting your line right and getting your braking points right, and then you should be okay. So there's only a couple. Whoa, as we see it just a little bit deep. And you talked about that a few minutes ago. That's right at pit exit, and pit exit coming right out almost directly into the racing line on the exit of turn 1. That is going to be crucial during this race to make sure that you are aware of cars that are coming out of the pits and cars that are on track.
You know, I'm going to make a comparison here, Charles, and this is going to be a long, meandering story, which is kind of usually my specialties here on this broadcast here on Apex Racing TV. But I could best compare the experience of exiting pit road here at Sonoma to my experience whenever I merge onto any sort of highway in my road car out there on the streets of Philadelphia, which are usually known for having some of the most respectful drivers in the lower 48, especially with their proximity to New Jersey, New York, and a lot of these cities around here in the Northeast, kind of near Northeast New England and mid-Atlantic-y kind of region. You got some of the Baltimore drivers, some Boston drivers occasionally. So we have some very respectful drivers here in the city of Philadelphia, and I drive a 1985 Oldsmobile Cutlass Supreme, which does not have a V8. It has the, I think, 3.6 liter V6.
3.8 liter V6. That is a classic General Motors engine. I'm very jealous.
Yeah, it's the old Buick V6, which I believe was actually the basis for the old IndyCar Buick V6 engine program, which later became the Menard V6 IndyCar engine program, and that's a conversation for a whole nother day. That engine out of the factory with that car produced 110 horsepower, but bearing in mind that car was made back in 1985, and 98% sure that fence technology was not good enough back then to keep all of those horses in the stable, so I'm probably pushing the better part of about 90 horsepower, which, considering I used to race a shifter cart in real life, you could probably mount 2 shifter cart motors together, just basically hot glue them together and link them up with the front axle, and I'd probably be pushing more horsepower than the motor that's in that car right now. So merging onto merging in with fast flowing traffic around the city of Philadelphia in a car that is probably pushing about 90 horsepower and only has a top speed of about 85 miles an hour. Not that I've ever gone or probably will ever get anywhere close to that. That's the best way I can describe the pit exit here at this track. For some of the GT3s and even the LMP2s as well, that is a terrifying experience, to say the very least.
Yeah, absolutely. That's going to be, like I said, it's going to be one of those trouble spots we're going to have to watch out for during the course of the race. I did verify that Nolan Uke is in the beneficiary GT3 class, so we'll see if we can get things updated there for that, as well as I'm looking to see who the other one. There's a P5 in a Ferrari in the Pro LMP2. Trying to see who that is, so we'll see if we can get that straightened out as well. So excuse me. Looks like qualifying is over. Corby on pole again. I think that makes him, was that 7 out of 7 this season? So Ty Shearing in second, Gene Kelly in third. Then in the beneficiary GT3, it is John Hicks taking pole in his McLaren with a 132.11. So it's going to be a nice battle back there. Looks like we've got about 3 cars within a second of each other up at the top of that field. So it's going to be an interesting race for those guys.
That's going to be a pretty good storyline to follow with this man, Corby. He started this season off in a Mercedes and then moved on to the Mustang after the one of the last rounds of the season at Road Atlanta. Started off at Spa for the 6th round of the championship in this Mustang, contesting the final 3 in that Mustang, which usually does not have a fantastic reputation for going around corners well. So it's interesting to see the fact that he's been able to stick that Mustang onto pole in convincing fashion in Open GT3 as well, with about over a second in fact, between himself and I believe Ty Shearing in second. I do believe that a new Shearing has entered this series, that being I believe his younger brother, unless I'm very much mistaken. We'll probably talk about him in a little bit on this broadcast. Ty Shearing, who we've been seeing a lot of this season, now going to be accompanied by his brother Aiden Shearing. So I'll do the research here. Yes, so Aiden is the younger brother of Ty Shearing, having to hit the books there for a few moments to get that squared away.
No, actually, I was going to make a correction there as we were talking with, So actually, Nolan, you actually ends up in P2 in the beneficiary GT3 class, and Carney at the very end of the qualifying session takes pole. So fantastic job by Ian Carney to get it the very last second.
Yeah, well done from Ian Carney, going to try and grab his 5th victory of this season, and he would also be his 4th in a row from the season. More about that in a little bit, but here is the starting grid from the second to last race of this season. Connor Parisa, driver of the number 11 Nitro Circus racing car, going to be starting this race from a pole after setting a one-man 18.655 in that qualifying session. Skylar Vicker going to join him on the front row. Tyler Gilmet and Gregory Meismer going to make up an all-pro Ben second row, with Hunter Reeve, who's already grabbed the victory thus far this season, going to be the last of our LMP2 starters in P5 overall. Corby All, who's been incredibly dominant thus far this season, possibly going to try and seal the deal in that Open GT3 championship. He's going to be starting this race P6 overall, top of the GT3 runners. Ty Schering going to be starting in 7th, next to Gene Kelly on that 4th row. And rounding out your top 10, your overall top 10, is going to be the P9 starter of, drumroll please, Ian Carney. Don't worry about it, Josh, all good. Ian Carney going to be starting this race in 9th in the number 54 car, top qualifying beneficiary GT3 driver, and Nolan Uke, the newcomer, going to round out your overall top 10.
Yeah, John Hicks is going to start in 11th, 3rd in the Ben class, was on the pole there for most of the qualifying session, just got nipped at the end. Luis Rios in P12, Elliott Whitfield in 13th, Dave Bell in 14th, Richard Davenport, Anthony Calvi on row 8, Tyler Manning in 17th, Tyler Reed in 18th, and Charles St. Pierre rounds out your 19-car field for tonight's race.
There we go. Thank you very much, Charles, for running through the rest of the grid. Maybe one of the smallest we've seen thus far this season, but it is still going to be packed with a whole lot of action and some fantastic storylines to follow. Got some drivers trying to continue a clean streak like Kobe All. Got some drivers trying to stake their claim on a championship and really cement themselves as a hard charger in this series. But you've also got those LMP2 classes, which have been incredibly competitive. Tyler Gilmet and Gregory Meismer trying to break the tie for race wins between the two of them, along with that Pro LMP2 class, which has been about as hard to predict as trying to pick the winning numbers for the Powerball jackpot lottery. But before we grab the green in this race here at Sonoma for round number 7 of the Operation eMotorsports Racing League, we should probably talk about one of the other partners that Operation Motorsports has to make everything possible, because on top of the valued support from CrowdStrike, Advanced Sim Racing is committed to supporting Operation Motorsports through generous contributions to their fundraising efforts and programs. In 2023, ASR donated a high-quality sim rig to Operation Motorsports Giving Tuesday's online auction, helping to raise funds for their impactful initiatives. Building on this commitment, ASR is pleased to contribute 2 additional sim rigs for the upcoming 2024 Giving Tuesday auction, further supporting Operation Motorsports' mission to provide veterans with exciting opportunities in the world of motorsports. Furthermore, Advanced Sim Racing has donated gift cards as prizes to the eMotorsports League, enhancing the competitive experience and rewarding participants who just so happen to do absolutely fantastic in this series. Contributions which reflect ASR's dedication to fostering engagement and growth within the eMotorsports community while supporting the valuable work of Operation Motorsports. We would like to thank Advanced Sim Racing, CrowdStrike, and Operation Motorsports for all the wonderful work that they do, not only organizing this series, but just making everything that they do possible. Really, just from my perspective as a broadcaster, I greatly appreciate, because it's been absolutely fantastic covering this series. But hey, we've still got 2 more 45-minute races left to go, and the second to last one going to get started in just a couple of moments time here at Sonoma. That pace car has made that long, treacherous run to come down pit lane. We'll definitely be talking about that during this race, but the field is now in the hands of our front row sitters, waiting for that green flag to come out to send them uphill and on their way into the first few corners. The green flag is down, the drivers are on their way. The LMP2s trying to get themselves sorted out, heading through the first few corners of this lap. Such a tricky run heading into the first heavy braking zone at the beginning of this race. Such a good overtaking opportunity for these drivers, but such a treacherous section as well. Makes one little mistake through there, and you could be in for a world of trouble. Looking at the GT3s now, Kobe Olgang, a fantastic start in the number 3 car. He's going to be leading comfortably. Meanwhile, looking at some drivers nearly running on the pit entry, trying to find any sort of way to get past their competitors. Everyone wants to lead lap 1 around these races, but at a track like this, Charles, which is oh so difficult to try and pull off an overtake, yet oh so easy to make a very costly mistake, some of these drivers may be exercising a little bit more caution than they have done the past this season.
Yeah, I think that's the name of the game for tonight. Is you want to be mistake free. If you whether you might not be on your max pace, but if you don't make any mistakes, you're going to have a good chance of scoring some points way up in the order, because there's going to be mistakes made during the course of this, and if you minimize yours, you're going to have a good opportunity to move up the grid.
Yeah, I think the saying to finish first you have to finish is definitely going to ring true in this race at Sonoma tonight. Connor Parise going to be leading the field around to complete the first lap of the race. He leads in Pro LMP2 over Skylar Vickroy, and Hunter Reeves a little bit farther behind. Gasset Guillemette and Meismer still running P1 and P2 respectively in the Pro Ben LMP2s. I believe they're currently running P3 and P4 overall as it stands currently. Looking at Tyler Manning, mega deep heading into the final hairpin of turn number 11, one of the last corners around this lap. Thankfully for him, he doesn't lose out on a spot. However, that was dangerous stuff for him. Meanwhile, looking at fight for the lead in the Ben GT3 category, Nolan Uke, the newcomer, the number 18 Corvette. He is still trying to throw some punches and trying to dethrone Ian Carney, who's been oh so dominant in that class. Has 4 victories thus far this season with a newcomer.
Ooh.
Looking at Pence and nearly making contact.
Yeah, that was a very now he's kind of caught up. Yeah, he's got it caught up. He's got to get back on his rhythm here. He took just a really shallow line into that corner and maybe got crossed up a little bit by Carney. And so now he's kind of on the back foot. He's just got to settle back down and start working his racing line again. Looks like he's back on it the way he's supposed to, as Tyler Manning is up 5 positions already, trying to work his way back up to the front of that GT3 field.
I'm not even sure what happened to my voice with all that drama heading down into turn number 4. That was so bizarre. I think my voice pitched up about 5 octaves. I haven't sounded that high pitched since I was about 11 years old, but that shows you how dramatic it was heading through the first few corners on this lap. That was near disaster for some of the Ben GT3 runners. Meanwhile, looking at the front runners in this field overall, Skylar Vickroy, who are riding on board with the number 28 ZFG racing car. He's running second, still behind Connor Parise. I think we're going to ride on board with him a little bit to just see these LMP2s carry oh so much speed heading through these corners. It's like watching a video game, Charles. It's absolutely insane seeing these drivers just haul the mail around these corners as well as they have, albeit there is some trouble in the air just because of the pit stops that they have to deal with, the challenging sections that clutter this racetrack, and also the curbs, which can just absolutely destroy your race.
Yeah, absolutely. These curbs are not fun. They're there as a track limit, and they're very difficult to navigate, especially with the LMP2s. Sometimes the LMP2s just can't handle them as well, but so far those guys have done a really, really good job of just getting the cars around the track. As we said, this is it's almost too small a track for those LMP2 cars, so they've done a real good job to keep everything together and keep everything on the grate. As we're watching now with the battle here with Hunter Reeve, I think he started maybe way back in the back, or something happened. I'm not sure if he just did a pit stop or pit start, or if maybe he just got caught up there at the beginning and has had to make up a little bit of time.
Some drivers already on the back foot considering the drama that we had at the beginning of this race. I'm really shocked that there's only a couple of drivers that find themselves in a somewhat troubling and a bit harder position between now and the end of this race. Of course, we want to try and make up as much time as you possibly can, and at the beginning of these races, that's really the time to strike while the iron is hot. We got to take a look at a replay of an incident involving Hunter Reeve. You can see him taking a big bite of the curb. That was heading through turn number 10. Hit the curb pretty bad on the inside, then hit the curb on the outside, and a big sideways snap hang through turn number 11.
Yeah, that cost him some time for sure. He had to get the car checked up. That's the heaviest braking zone on track, is that hairpin to finish off the lap as they come back around, as we now on board with Luis Rios, who is running pretty well. He's running, looks like he's running second in the Ben class. And 6th in the GT3s overall, so he's having a really good run thus far. Looks like he's getting that Ferrari around the track, and he's kind of maybe getting held up a little bit by the 54 car of Carney. Like he's got a pretty good run going.
And as much as I said just a couple of minutes ago, the fact that the challenges around this racetrack and the killer curbs litter this racetrack, you also got a whole lot of challenges with the drivers that are on it as well. That was near disaster between the two of those drivers heading through one of the slowest sections of this lap, that being the long pseudo hairpin, even though it's really 2 corners in one of turn number 7. That's such a tricky corner to try and get right, but it's also a fantastic overtaking opportunity if these drivers are feeling just a little bit bold. But it looks like that could have ended in blows for the driver who's still leading in the Ben GT3 class.
Yeah, for sure. And that's a pretty tight little group there between Carney, Rios, and Uke. I mean, they're nose to tail on the track, and no real air separating them. And so now it's going to be okay. Strategy, as you saw. Rios kind of take a look on the inside of turn 7. Carney probably just took the wide line, maybe did what we call a diamond, where he just kind of, took that apex in the middle on the outside as opposed to the 2 inside apexes for turn 7. And then Rios said, "Ooh, there might be an opportunity there." Took a look on the inside, no chance to make the pass. The good thing about that diamond cornering is you get a really good exit out, and so it's very hard. As we see a spin, and that is, I believe that was Uke. Yep, it was indeed. That turn 5, I believe, or is that turn 6? Just that really, really long, sweeping left-hand corner that's kind of an uphill to downhill as we're on board with him now. Crests the hill. Yeah, just the rear end just got a little light and looped the car around, but managed to catch it. No other contact with anybody else, so he's going to have some time to make up.
Nolan Uke has been pretty quick thus far. However, he is showing why he's got the rookie stripes on that race car. Some pretty big mistakes thus far. He's been fast, though. Do not get me wrong. It'll be really nice to see what he can do if he puts together a really clean race, because I think he would be able to be a pretty strong contender in this series in the not-too-distant future. Looking at some strong contenders right now. Hunter Reeves, the driver of the number 44 TFG Racing Pro LMP2 car. He's had a pretty good season thus far. Hasn't really grabbed too many victories. Really just grabbed one earlier on in the season at Canadian Tire Motorsports Park, a race where really every single LMP2 car, with the exception of probably 1 or 2, got struck by a falling anvil at some point. But Hunter Reeves, still a pretty quick driver in this series, however running into some difficulties at the early stages of this race, and you can see him sideways coming out of 3A. I feel like this discussion pops up every single time we run a race at an American racetrack. Why do American racetracks label the corners as they do? I'm getting flashbacks of VIR. You've got turn 1, which is really marked like as a straightaway more than anything else. You've got like, you got a corner, you got 1 corner before you actually hit turn number 1, and they got like 3 more corners between turn number 1 and turn number 2. Then you got 3 and 3A. I just don't get. I remember tuning into a NASCAR Cup Series race broadcast of this track, probably back in 2017, I think, and they were going through the track map. And bearing in mind, folks, that's not the layout that we're using here with the carousel. That was the layout that NASCAR ran originally before they added in the short chute. And then NASCAR tried rerunning it a couple of years ago. But they're running the short chute here at Sonoma, and the track just mysteriously went from like turn 3 to turn 7. So you know what, I'm not even going to ask any more questions, because it's just going to lead to more questions than answers. Let's get back to the racing and talk about Conor Parise, who's dealing with the lap traffic pretty expertly, as he's been able to grow that lead between himself and Vicroy. However, Vicroy's still within striking distance, and Parise trying to deal with a little bit of challenge from, I believe, Gene Kelly in the Ferrari.
Yeah, it's that's going to be a premium. We're working through the field. We're 8 minutes into a 45-minute race. They're already lapping the GT3 cars, so this might be a continuing theme for the rest of the race. It's just going to be the challenge of them trying to work their way through and around GT traffic as we get on board here with Ian Carney across said corner 3A, and just misses the braking point. I think he got caught up on the curb and just basically had to give up the spot. So he's going to drop a couple of positions back down into, was that a couple of the pro drivers who made their way around during that. So it looked like he did get passed by a couple of cars, so but it doesn't look like he's lost any positions on the track.
A small little mistake, though, can probably hurt the morale just a little bit. Have a feeling that this is probably the most amount of pressure that Ian Carney has run into thus far this season. Certainly the most amount of pressure he's had to feel in some time is Skylar Vickroy nearly having a big crash heading down into turn number 3. That's the Mercedes GT3 driver right in front of him, trying to get a number off of that car. That is the 46 entry. That was a major source of drama heading in. That was a big moment with himself, and I believe that may have been Ty Schuring in the 46, so my eyes deceiving me. I think I said 48. It's actually the 46 car. There he is. There's Ty Schuring, the Open GT3 racer, currently running second in the class at the moment as Corby begins to pull away, looking to try and grab a 7th victory from 7 races this season. But Ty Schuring, very lucky that the LMP2 cars have a bit more error braking than GT3. Otherwise, that would have been absolute calamity heading into 3.
Yeah, and you can just see the, as we see it right there again. Oh, just so close to just disaster there for all racing along with, I think that was Gilmet. I'm not sure. We'll have to check to see. Anyway, but yeah, you can just see the speed difference between the two car classes and how tight this track is. That you almost have to just plan the corner. Skylar Vickroy, thank you. Had to plan that corner, you know, a couple of corners early to make that move, and just get your timing right, because obviously once you start climbing up behind them, the speed difference is pretty dramatic, especially when those GTs are trying to corner.
Despite the fact that we're only a couple weeks away from Halloween, I don't think any of these drivers want the amount of spooks that they have been given thus far, especially for some of the GT3s, as a near bit of wall contact with John Hicks, the Savage 7 308 McLaren heading down into turn number 11, running mega wide. That's such a tricky corner to try and get right. You're trying to drop the anchors badly, even in a GT3 race car. Very tricky corner to get right, and here's a replay to see what happened to Hicks. You can see him following the number 17 Porsche right in front of him, maybe trying to go for a move that just ends in tears. Whoa. Mega deep on the brakes, I think. Oh boy, that was I think if these GT3 race cars did have ABS and there weren't a couple barriers in some cities in between then and there, he probably would have ended up in Baja California with how quick he was entering that corner. That was a near disaster for John Hicks, but thankfully he was able to drop the anchors just enough and not lose out on a terrible amount of time. I think actually when everything was said and done, he may have even got that move done on Richard Davenport, which I believe was the driver that he was trying to get the move done, hang down into turn number 11.
Yeah, absolutely, I think. And that was, as you said, it was very optimistic to make that move down into the hairpin. But yeah, so he's managed to get around Davenport one way or the other. So I did notice, and I'm just going to see this, that Meisber has came into the pits. I don't think he came back out on track, so that might be his day
he's out
over.
of the session.
Yeah, I have to see if we can find a replay on that, because that's obviously very bad news, because it's always been a really good battle between him and Gilmet every week. It's been just great to watch those two guys go at it.
Trying to figure out what exactly happened to Gregory Meismer. He's entirely out of the session at this point, so a whole lot of drama befalling him. There's a spin hang down into turn number 1 and near contact with himself, and I believe, unless I'm very much mistaken, that may have been Hunter Reeve. Yes, you're right there, Charles. That was Reeve having a pretty close encounter with Meisber in the number 75 car. There may have been another moment as well. I think there's a lot of incidents involving him over the past few laps before he decided to call it an evening. That's tough for him, because that will end his I don't think it'll end his chances on anything, but it will certainly end his chances of grabbing his 4th victory in the season. So it looks like Tyler Gilmet going to be on track for that. May have been a small little wall bump on the inside of turn number 12 there. Saw that car jolt a little bit. And dealing with lap traffic, hanging his way into turn number 4. That I believe.
Oh, there we
no,
go.
it's a spin. That was
Yeah.
that may have been what took Meismer out of it. I think that was the last incident that he got involved in. That was some wheel-to-wheel contact as well, Charles. So I think that may have inflicted some sort of suspension damage on that car. That's a tough pill to swallow if you're Gregory Meismer, because that is going to take him out of the Pro Ben fight and give a 4th victory on the season to Tyler Gilbert.
Yeah, it's very, you know, and we talked about it a little bit about the lap traffic, and it's just, you know, not really anything he could have done about it. As we saw that Hicks going wide there, or no, sorry, Dave Bell. My apologies there. Yeah, just too much speed through there. But you know, that's kind of the thing when you're doing multi-class racing. Sometimes you just get in a position that there's no way you can avoid an incident. You get a GT3 car spinning in front of you, and that's pretty much day done. Unfortunately, I hate it for Greg because he's always great in the interviews, and it's always a good battle between him. It's just carry too much speed through 2 there for Bell. Gets on the inside of that curb and just has to just let the car roll toward the wall. Does not manage to make contact with the wall, so that's good for him.
Yeah, certainly good news to him. It's so easy to run into the walls around this racetrack. You've got grass. It doesn't really look like it, but it is grass surrounding this racetrack. Just looks like a whole bunch of hay to either side of you heading around this racetrack. So whenever you go off, even with the reworked off-track physics in the world of iRacing, that can usually end in some sort of disaster. Gotta take a look at another angle of the disaster that involved Gregory Meismer not terribly long ago. And there you can see the spin from the 18 car heading his way into turn number 4. Meismer, just an innocent victim there, really had no room to go, just being at the wrong place at the wrong time with Nolan Uke in that Corvette spinning right in front of him. That is a very tough pill to swallow if you are Gregory Meismer. Gotta take a look at another angle, this time from the right-hand side of that car, and you can see that major bit of contact, and you can also kind of see those wheels begin to get a little bit out of skew. I think there may have been a moment with Davenport and Ben GT3.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think we saw, just caught the end of that of him trying to get his car righted off the track, as we see Bell just letting Reeve through there and really checked up a lot. Which, you know, you want to you know, when you're doing multi-class racing, everybody will tell you, hey, just, whoa, no, is that Uke around again? Was that contact with Bell as he was coming by?
I think that may have been it. Uke having another moment. Certainly been a driver that we've kept our eyes on in his series debut. But outside the pace that he showed in qualifying, starting second of the Ben GT3 drivers, has been too much outside of that. Here's a replay of the incident with the number 18 car. Can't even say this is his fault, possibly. Gotta take a look at. Yeah, honestly, that was BMW there. I think he had probably about like 3/4 to a full lane on the outside of him, and really did not give Nolan the space that he probably needed / deserved heading downhill into turn number 6. 2 cars coming to blows. Richard Davenport was not one of them, I believe. That was Bell that was involved in that, but Richard Davenport running in no man's land and gaining a spot, I believe, as a result of all of that drama with Bell and Uke a couple of moments ago. Gotta take a look at another angle of this, Charles. Actually, no, there's an incident involving Richard Davenport. So some more Ben GT3 drivers running into some difficulties. We're heading through one of the sections right before that, turn number 3, and narrowly escaping that incident.
That's if we could watch every car at the race of every car will probably do that at least one time. It's just the nature of that corner. It's such a blind corner. As we see Davenport around here, that's coming through turn 1. It was like he got on the inside curb, couldn't hold on to it. Oh, then the rejoin around.
Wow.
So as I was saying a couple of minutes ago, if you're a slow car and you're a little bit off the pace, you know, the rule of thumb is always run your racing line, stay on your line, run the pace that you can run, let the faster cars work themselves around you. Don't try and move over because as soon as you move off racing line where the car is going to try and pass, is generally when you're going to end up making contact with another car, which is not what you want to do, obviously. So it's always, the standard racing practice is, hey, just run your line, let the faster cars come around, and then they'll continue on, and you can continue your race, and then everybody's happy that way.
There have been just so many close calls. I think I'm very happy that I'm not one of these drivers out there on the racetrack, because chances are I would be terrified if I was one of the GT3 cars, and even if I was one of the LMP2s, I'd probably need a change of pants whenever everything is said and done. From this race, there's been so many close calls thus far, and we're only about 21 and a half minutes in to this 45-minute race here from round number 7 of the Operation eMotorsports Racing League. Looking at Connor Parise, still leading it at the moment. The gap between himself and Skylar Vicroy has ballooned as of late. Now about 7.6, 7.7. It's definitely over 7.5 seconds for sure for Connor Parise. And I think part of the reason why he's been able to do this as well as he has is just being able to deal with the lap traffic with a whole lot of near robot level efficiency.
Yeah, he's we were talking about the off tracks, and I was just kind of looking down the list in our SDK software, and I've identified, I believe, 7 cars out of the 19 that have yet to have an off track. Parise and Vicroy are 2 of those cars. So yeah, Parise has just done a really good job. Since he's got a little gap to Vicroy, he can concentrate on making passes instead of trying to make passes and fend off a challenge from another car. So that's really helped him out, and so he's done a real good job of just setting those passes up and making them and getting out of the way and letting the rest of the cars race. So well done to him as well. So Vicroy's also done a good job, and we still have pit stops left, so there's an opportunity there for Vicroy to make up some ground. And as I'm sitting here thinking about it, we're 23 minutes into this race, so the LMP2s aren't really putting out max pace. I'm wondering if there's a chance that maybe one of these guys tries to do a no stop strategy as we see Hunter Reeve come in.
Ooh, there we go. There's Hunter Reeve, the driver running 3rd in Pro LMP2. I think there may be some meritary theory possibly there, Charles. These drivers have definitely noticed the fact that a lot of these races have been pulled because of strategy calls that turn out to work for a lot of these drivers. So maybe going for something off the wall. I mean, maybe a driver... I think if anyone's going to risk it, it'll probably be Tyler Gilmette in the Pro Ben LMP2 category, because with Gregory Meismer out of the session, out of the race, he's guaranteed the Pro Ben victory, even if he has to tow back to the pits when everything is said and done, because he runs out of fuel out there on the racetrack. So maybe he's going to go for all out glory and try and snag the overall victory, which would be an incredibly impressive result for a Pro Ben LMP2 driver. I don't believe we've had a driver do that thus far this season. So Tyler Gilmette looking to try and join a very elusive club of 1 thus far in this season. But as these pit stops begin, I think we'll go through the leaders as it stands at the moment in all 4 of our classes. Connor Parise, who we mentioned not terribly long ago, who's just in the back of shot. There he is in the number 11 Nitro Circus Sim Racing entry. He's still leading in the Pro LMP2 category. Pretty significant gap between himself and Skylar Vicroy. In the Pro Ben class, it was Tyler Gilmette leading at the moment. This man, Corby leading an Open GT3, the Eternal Racing number 3 Mustang, has been eternally fast thus far this season, and has been eternally up in the front as well. I think all the drivers in that series are probably maybe starting up some sort of GoFundMe possibly to buy themselves like an Acme falling anvil to drop on Corby at the end of this season, because I mean, he's on track for a pretty convincing championship win. But still, if he goes for an absolute clean sweep, that would be just a mighty performance from Corby, who's, without a question, a shadow of a doubt in my mind, one of, if not the most impressive drivers that we've gotten a chance to cover thus far this season. In the Ben GT3 category, an impressive performance from Ian Carney is being challenged a little bit thus far. Corby having a big off-track moment hang through turn number 10. That was near disaster for our open GT3 leader, and you can see him dealing with another GT3 car that I believe was at Calvi. As looks like, is that? I'm trying to think of who that is that's come down pit lane. I see an LMP2.
Pit lane.
Yeah, is that Hunter Reeves coming in yet again? This is odd.
Interesting. That is odd. Yeah, I'm not sure. Yeah, he's changing tires. I'm wondering if maybe he didn't have that set last time. But obviously that takes him out of any type of competition for a race victory. But you know, he's running third, you know, in the Pro LMP2 class, and you know, if he manages to sweep the season, then he may no good deed going unpunished. He may get promoted to the higher class for next season.
I mean, that would still be pretty cool to see. He's been absolute wheelman in the GT3 category, so that'd be pretty cool to see him in maybe some LMP2 machinery or some faster machinery in next season. We'll have to wait and see how things shake out for Corby all in the not-too-distant future in the Operation Motorsports world. Gotta say, in the Ben GT3 category, that was a big bit of wall contact, my apologies, folks, with, I believe that may have been, it was a McLaren for sure. Trying to figure out what McLaren it may have possibly been Hicks running third in Ben GT3. That class is currently being led. I nearly said lead, and that I don't believe is a word in the English language. Ben GT3 at the moment is being led by a driver who's had a pretty up and down season, that being Luis Rios, who according to our graphics is a LMP2 driver. He's certainly been showing LMP2 speed compared to everybody else in Ben GT3. He's in front of Ian Carney by a pretty significant margin, I believe. So there's been a pretty good fight to follow with, actually, has Carney just gone by him? I think he has.
Yeah, Carney's right in front of him. So yeah, that battle's still continuing on. They've been those two plus Uke for a while. Uke now in the pits. So Carney leading that class. Rios obviously right in a great position to capitalize on any mistake.
Rios, I mean, thus far in the time that we've been able to see him in this series, I don't think we've seen him be in contention for a victory. I gotta say, though, credit where credit's due to him. He now finds himself in a podium position in Pro LMP2 as a result of the extended trip down pit lane for Hunter Reeves. He still stopped, so I'm not sure what in the world is going on there. Here's Sean Hicks in the 308 Savage 7 McLaren. I believe he may have been the driver that made contact heading out through turn number 12 about a lap ago. That wall sneaks up on you a whole lot. It's very similar to the swimming pool section at Monaco. Looking at it, I think that wheel is a little bit out of skew. Slight left-hand down action. You can see a little bit of damage on the front of that race car, which just disappears in the blink of an eye. These drivers using fast repairs that they have. Corby coming down pit lane from the lead in Open GT3, and he's being joined by Manning, who at the moment finds himself third in the class.
So they've made their stops. We still have a few cars that have yet to pit. Got Schuring still out on track, Manning in the pits, as well as Ole Dunn on his way out. Calvi was in earlier, had a 2-minute and 28-second pit stop, 2:15 stopped. So obviously either already used his fast repair or forgot to turn it on and had some damage, so that had to be fixed up. We see Davenport working his way off pit road. And so getting down to the last 15 minutes of this race, and as we see more and more pit stops coming in now.
Yeah, there's Dave Bell in the 313 BMW. He is joined down pit lane at the moment by the front two in GT3. This, according to our producer, is a drive-through penalty for Dave Bell. He's been involved in some incidents thus far, so that would not be too much of a shock. And plus, based off the fact he only spent 34.9 seconds down pit lane, kind of adds a little bit of credence to that theory. So Bell running into some difficulties thus far. That's going to drop him down in Ben GT3. Looking at the fight between Carney and Rios for that Ben GT3 lead. Looks like, I believe, Carney is going to get a pretty big gap over Rios, who spent a whole lot more time down pit lane, 58.8 seconds compared to Ian Carney's 44.4. So Rios, not sure what took so long for him to come down pit lane. I think he may need to invest in some Red Bull for his mechanics.
Yeah, maybe so. Yeah, it was an extra 3.7 seconds stopped for Rios. And then even that, I think he took a little extra time working his way into the pits. And you can see, and I mentioned this, I was just on Road Atlanta, which is a similar track to this. And I was running the Corvette and was really struggling with the curbs. And you can kind of see that with Rios as well. Seems like every time he catches a curb, that car just wants to misbehave. As we see Paris working his way around some more GT traffic. And still continuing to lead the race by a nice sizable 8.5 second margin.
Yeah, at this point in time, looking pretty set in stone for Connor Paris, knowing my luck that I probably just jinxed him. Still having a comfortable lead in the Pro LMP2 category and still dealing with some lap traffic, which I think for these LMP2 drivers gotta feel like Groundhog Day in a way, because it feels like every single corner on every single lap they have to deal with some traffic. Near off-track excursion for them, heading down into turn number 7, one of the hardest, if not the hardest, braking zone around this racetrack, at the near end of the runoff area for whenever NHRA runs at this track. There you can see the start-finish area. Well, the start-finish area, good lord, I got into drag racing as my first form of racing as a race fan, so I should know that there's no start-finish lines in drag racing. The starting area, whenever NHRA runs around here, is right out on the outskirts of that start-finish straightaway, which, funnily enough, many moons ago used to serve as the start-finish straightaway for the road course as well. Skylar Vicroy coming into the pits from second in the Pro LMP2 category, so trying to do something a little bit different than Paris, which, considering the gap between those two, can't really knock him for trying. With that big gap, Skylar Vicroy needs to do something different to try and close him up.
Yeah, absolutely. He's just stopped a little bit earlier than Paris, as we see Kelly Inn was one of the last of the GT cars to come in, was running second in class before he made his stop. I think the only one we have left now are Connor Paris, Tyler Guillemette, and Elliott Whitfield, I believe, in the GT3 field, are our last 3 remaining cars yet to pit.
So most of the pit stops already done and dusted for these drivers for round number 7 of the Operation eMotorsports Racing League. That was a near disaster, 2 near disasters, nearly 3 near disasters for Skylar Vicroy in the span of about 10 seconds. Holy cow, that was... Oh, and Dave Bell going off the track, heading through turn number 4. Be careful here on the rejoin, Dave. They get through that nice and clean, and kind of a little bit of dirt on that BMW of Dave Bell after that off-track excursion. But I'm curious, Josh, you could possibly take a look at a replay of that three-peat of absolutely heart-in-the-mouth, terrifying moments for Skylar Vicroy. The number 28 ZFG racing car nearly found himself making contact with two separate cars in the span of about 10 seconds with 3 separate moments. Here may be a moment for a driver who spent a whole lot of time down pit lane. That was Anthony Calvi. Not sure why he spent so much time down in the pits. I'll be taking a look at the pit exit and this very hectic time for Skylar Vicroy, the driver of the number 28 car, having, boy, I'm not even sure the best way I could describe it. His heart rate definitely spiked up as a result of this. Trying to go side by side with Gene Kelly, nearly made contact, those two did. Then he nearly runs into the back at 313, having to take some evasive action, hang through 3 and 3A, and then Vicroy trying to get that move done, nearly making contact again. I mean, credit where credit's due to him, considering the gap to himself and Paris. He kind of has to push it, but that was definitely a whole lot of hair-raising moments for him, as Anthony Calvi has come down pit lane yet again, along with, okay, I was about to say, Hunter Reeve has come into the pits again, along with our Pro LMP2 leader of Connor Paris.
Yeah, he's coming in for his one and only stop. Tyler Guillemette is still yet to pit, so he is not quite taking the lead, and he's in now. So everybody's stopped. Nobody's going to try and push the fuel. So it looks like either there's a rule that you have to take a pit stop, or there's just no physical way to stretch the fuel for the entire race. So we'll get everybody stopped in, and Skylar Vickroy obviously is hoping that Reese gets caught in rush hour traffic, so to try and make up that gap. So it's obviously very terrible outlap for Vickroy. Not really much you could do about it. You had two GT cars running two separate lines, and you just got pinned.
And there's Skylar Vickroy now heading his way into turn number 1 and 2, quite a long ways back of Paris, who, despite coming in a few laps later, still had a shorter run down pit lane than Vickroy. About 1.5 seconds between those two in terms of their time spent down pit lane. My apologies, folks. Hunter Reeve coming in for his 3rd stop in this race, so not really sure what's going on for him. Possibly some sort of technical issues, because every single time he's come down pit lane, he spent a whole lot of time in the process, currently 6 laps down in Pro LMP2. So I think there's got to be some pretty bad technical issues, which are definitely an iRacer's worst nightmare. I'm not sure what's going on there. Now it's 13 seconds between Paris and Vickroy. A fantastic driver, the driver of the number 11 car, and he only has about 8-ish minutes to try and seal the deal.
Yeah, he's in cruise control now. Just going to be traffic management, try and finish this race off. He's got the ability to give up a little time when he needs to, and still hopefully survive the rest of the race and clinch the win. I'm sure Vickroy's not thinking that. Vickroy wants to try and get up there and give him a challenge, but it's sometimes traffic gives and sometimes traffic takes away, and it looks like Paris has had the best of it today.
Yeah, some of these drivers getting the short end of the stick, some of them getting the long end of the stick in terms of luck, which in these races, I mean, driver skill is always so important, but luck can usually play a pretty big factor as well. Looking at probably the closest class fight that we have at the moment, with about 14 seconds between Paris and Vickroy in Pro LMP2. Pro Ben settled as Gregory Meismer had some off-track excursions earlier on in the race and left well short of the halfway mark, allowing Tyler Gilmet to take a pretty dominant victory in that class. Open GT3 as well, pretty spread apart with about 16 seconds between Kobiol and Schuring. In Ben GT3, though, the fight between Luis Rios, the Ben driver, the number 10 Ferrari, about 1.5 seconds behind Ian Carney, looking to try and grab 4 straight victories in this season, which is only a feat that one other person has done thus far, that being another GT3 driver of Kobiol, which honestly, Charles, that's some pretty good company to find yourself in this series.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, Rios has done a good job. He was several seconds back. He's done a really good job of making up that gap to Carney, and they're going to make a race out of this before it's all said and done. If Rios keeps his pace up, we're going to have a nice battle here at the end of the race. I'm not sure if maybe Carney underfueled a little bit. Maybe that's why he's having his take it a little bit easier to make sure he gets it to the end. Because we talked about the gap in 3.7 seconds shorter pit stop than Rios, so maybe he gambled a little bit on fuel, and so now it's going to become a race here as the gap is now 0.7 of a second.
Maybe my perspective's a little bit different on this, Charles, but if Ian Carney underfueled his car, that would not be a smart call for him at all, considering he's trying to go for 4 straight victories. Already has 4 victories thus far this season, trying to go for his 5th tonight. So to underfuel your race car under circumstances as tense as this, I mean, even if he stayed stopped for about 1 more second, I guess considering how the gap has closed up, that would result in there being a change in lead in the Ben GT3 category, which we may still see anyway. That gap is now about 0.5 second, with Luis Rios in the number 10 Ferrari trying to chase down Ian Carney in the number 54 4-wide Motorsport Porsche. That car has been at the front in Ben GT3 more often than it hasn't, so he's been dominant thus far this season. However, he's got a fight on his hands. It's Porsche versus Ferrari coming to the end of this race. Less than 5 minutes on the clock, 30 laps on the board for this man, Connor Paris, who's having to deal with this and still losing a little bit of time in the Pro LMP2 category, probably because he wants no parts of that madness in Ben GT3 that he is now dispatched of, heading down into turn number 7. But the fight between Carney and Rios is definitely on. They're going to be side by side coming out of the corner. A big off-track excursion for Ian Carney. Big curb whack coming out of turn number 7. That's going to cost him a whole lot of time, and this may be the opportunity that Luis Rios in that number 10 Ferrari takes to take the lead and the win in Ben GT3 with nearly 4 minutes left on the clock. Will he go for a move heading down into turn number 11? Doesn't look like he's going to be close enough yet. However, that number 10 car is menacing and trying to do a bump and run coming out of the corner. These are GT3 cars, boys, not NASCAR's stock cars, but these drivers still trying to go for it anyways.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, he's really closed that gap down, and you can see there's a couple of sections that he's just a bit quicker than Carney. He's managed to tighten that gap up, as we saw Carney make him a little bit of mistake coming out of 7, working his way through 8, getting a little wide up on the curbs, and looks like the Porsche is not necessarily liking the curbs as well. So he's got to be very, very precise on the remainder of these last few minutes of racing, or he's going to end up losing this lead.
You got two completely different looking race cars, two different drivers, and just two race cars that have so completely different characteristics as well. The Ferrari, a little bit newer in sim compared to the Porsche. However, both of these cars have definitely been messed with a little bit to try and get their level of performance just about equal. These two drivers going tit for tat thus far in this race. In terms of their best laps, though, gotta say, Ian Carney has been a little bit slower in terms of pace than Luis Rios, who has a best lap at a 1 minute 30.999 compared to Ian Carney's 132.144. I'll tell you what, the pace from Luis Rios is making that German Porsche of Ian Carney go 999 because he is feeling the burn for sure. Carney feeling the pressure. Vicroy just went for a little bit of a gutsy move in the past few corners to try and dispatch of that GT3 traffic. But coming to the final 2 laps of this race, this fight between Rios and Carney is still far from over, and I think one of these LMP2 cars may end up being a determining factor. Never mind, it's a GT3 car that's going to allow Luis Rios to take the lead in Ben GT3, checking up Ian Carney a little bit, hanging through the first few corners, and that was the opportunity that Luis Rios took advantage of, and that is going to give him the lead in Ben GT3. Now, at this point in time, he needs to focus on what's in his windscreen rather than what's in his mirror, because he just needs to gun it.
Yeah, absolutely. He just needs to focus forward and just run his race, run his fastest laps here at the end. So we're getting a replay here. And I believe they were coming up on Whitfield, if I'm not mistaken. And, you know, as you can see, that Porsche is becoming a handful. And just checked up. I think he saw Whitfield trying to return on the track, checked the car up. The rear end just kind of slid out from under him a bit, which is, you know, we've talked about the Porsche and its pros and its cons, and that's definitely one of its cons is we see Whitfield going off there, clattering the wall, start rolling back on track, right in the way, right in front of Carney. And that was what caught him out, and so had to check up to make sure he didn't hit Whitfield and allowed Rios to get by.
And the white flag is in the air. The white flag has been in the air for quite some time. Conor Parise is on that last lap, heading his way through turn number 6 for the final time on track for a dominant victory in Pro LMP2. I think there may have been a swap-a-roo between Carney and Rios, as Carney's now back in the lead of Ben GT3. There may have been a moment for that driver in the number 10 Ferrari, because he's just lost out on the lead in Ben GT3, and that'd be a whole lot of drama coming to the end of this race, because there's about a second gap between those two cars not terribly long ago. Now it's nearly a second gap again, just the other way around, so Carney possibly being thrown a lifeline at the end of this race. But this man, Conor Parise, driver the number 11 Nitro Circus sim racing car, going to round his way around the final corner and take the victory here at Sonoma from the 7th round of this championship. A pretty brilliant drive from Conor Parise, it must be said. A driver who's had a pretty rough go of things this season, it must be said. hasn't been a driver that we've seen grab a shocking amount of victories, only 2 on the board thus far, but that's going to be win number 3, and that's going to help him out a lot in that Pro LMP2 championship fight with himself and Skylar Vickroy. So well done to him, and well done to Tyler Gilmet. I'm curious how that fight with himself and Meismer would have shaken out had Meismer not had those incidents earlier on in the race. But taking a look at what may have given the Ben GT3 victory to Carney, and it was a big off-track moment for Luis Rios in very similar fashion to what happened to the Corvette that checked Ian Carney up and gave Rios that opportunity to snag the Ben GT3 lead. Looks like Rios has that exact same moment hang down into turn number 2, and it cost him the victory in Ben GT3. Corby, meanwhile, just snagged his 7th victory of the season, still absolutely dominant in that Ford Mustang. Ty Schuring finishing behind, can't even say right behind, finishing behind in P2 in class. However, he had a nice fight on his hands between himself and Tyler Manning towards the end, with only about 0.3 of a second between those two drivers. And oh, that's a spin from Hunter Reeve coming out of turn number 4 after the end of the race. Some preemptive donuts going on for him. And here's Luis Rios. He may be feeling like a little bit of a donut after this mistake. Oh yeah, he lost it on the bumps heading up the hill through turn number 1 into turn 2, and it just spears him off the track. Doesn't end up in the barrier, but ends up in P2. Ian Carney just got handed a lifeline there to snag his 5th victory on the season and his 4th in a row in not very convincing fashion, lucky fashion to be sure, but he was still the one that grabbed the checkered flag when everything is said and done.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's just that's the way of this track is just when you think you've got it figured out, you hit a rogue bump, or you take a slightly different line through a corner, with the weight being a little different. And as you saw, Rios just lost the rear end of the car. Didn't look like he was really taking too much speed in there, or way too much speed in there, but just once again just kind of lost it, and allowed Carney to come back and take the lead and the win.
And so I believe most, if not all, of the cars have taken the checkered flag from this race. We may get some donuts from Corby. Oh yes, we will. Don't hit the wall. Oh, it tapped it a little bit. Oh boy, if this was a world of NASCAR, you know that Twitter would be awash of people saying that he was cheating and had to hit the back of the car to try and full tech inspection. But don't have to worry about that in the world of iRacing, because I don't think there's going to be a bunch of preteens on Twitter that are going to be losing their minds over all of this. I'm losing my mind over the smoke show from Corby. Oh, this is a beautiful burnout on that start-finish straightaway, actually in that small little patch on the inside of turn number 11, which those who've seen a lot of NASCAR races around this track may remember Gilligan's Island there back in the 90s, I believe, when they had so many entries for a race here at Sonoma, they had to add an added pit lane in that section of the racetrack. But looking at these drivers burning it down when everything is said and done from the second to last race of this Operation eMotorsports Racing League season, all the cars, I believe, have now taken the checkered flag, so we'll run through the results when everything is said and done before we move on to some interviews and wrap things up from tonight's broadcast here on Apex Racing TV. And I'll tell you what, for those who have tuned into the racing action thus far, it's still not over yet. In 1 week's time, gonna bring this season to a close at Sebring for some LMP2 and GT3 action, the action that you always expect from this series. Connor Parise takes a victory when everything is said and done, his 3rd victory in this season. He wins it over Skylar Vickroy, who finishes nearly 14 seconds back in P2. Tyler Gilmet, the Pro Ben LMP2 driver, going to round out your overall podium in 3rd. Corby Old now scoring 7 victories in this season. That number 3 car has been on rails and proving that, even though he had a little bit of a challenge on his hand in the earlier stages. And that's going to be Ty Schuring rounding out your top 5 overall. Tyler Manning, the Canadian in the number 13 car, going to finish right behind in 6th. Tyler Reed finishes in 7th. Gene Kelly finishes in P8. Ian Carney snags a pretty dramatic victory in the Ben GT3 category in front of Luis Rios, the driver of the number 10 Ferrari, who despite finishing P10 overall and P2 in class, still gave Carney a hell of a challenge, and that rounds out your overall top 10.
Yeah, John Hicks finishes in 11th. Dave Bell in 12th. Nolan Uke in 13th. Richard Davenport 14th. Elliott Whitfield 15th. Hunter Reeve had some trouble during the course of the race, finished in 16th. Anthony Calvi in 17th. Greg Meismer, obviously we talked about him earlier, finishing 18th, and Charles St. Pierre finishing 19th. Both Tyler Manning and Tyler Reed share the Hard Charger Award. Both gained 11 spots during the race. I think Manning really would have really needed a good qualifying there. I think he had maybe something for all, but the drop in the qualifying spot really hurt him.
And so that is going to be the results when everything is said and done here from round number 7 of the season at Sonoma. Got some drivers waiting in the interview waiting area, and I think the first driver that I'm going to drag here into the commentary booth to have a quick little chat is going to be our eventual winner in the Ben GT3 category, that being Ian Carney, who now joins us here on Apex Racing TV. Ian, it was certainly an up and down night for you and an up and down final 10 minutes. Talk us through the race that we just saw here at Sonoma.
Oh man, I can finally breathe. I had a good time. It's just so tough out there with this track. I don't know who designed this thing. If I could find them, I swear they would probably have some bruises. But outside of that, I had some fun with Luis. Me and him were racing pretty good, and he kept kind of spinning out in front of me, and I would just kind of let him by, I guess, a little bit in the name of survival, and it ended up working out for me. I don't know how, but it did.
Well, I've got some bad news for you, Ian. One of the people who designed this racetrack is a gentleman by the name of Robert Marshall Jr., who's originally an attorney, so I don't think it would be very advisable to do that. But it was still a pretty hard-fought show from you, and you snagged yet another victory from this season. I believe you're 5th from this season, so heading into the final race of the season at Sebring in 1 week's time, gonna try and gun for win number 6?
Yeah, I'm gonna try to. Unfortunately, we didn't have Tanner Masters or I think Brandon Mateo, who are P2 and 3, I guess, in beneficiaries this week. So hopefully they're back tomorrow so we can have a good race, or not tomorrow, next week, so we can have a good race. I know Sebring pretty well. Sunset Corner is, and even the final turn there. The track is so tough because of the way it's built on those uneven concrete kind of tiles. Man, it's going to be another tough one. It really will be.
Well, fingers crossed it's going to be an exciting show. This season has been fantastically entertaining to follow thus far, and you've put on a pretty good show for us tonight here at Sonoma. And before we let you go and celebrate that victory in the Ben GT3 class, is there anyone you want to give a thanks to or shout out?
Yeah, I appreciate the compliments there. I definitely want to give a shout out to Operation Motorsports. They have a fantastic program. I want to give a shout out to you guys up here in the booth, making this a show for us all, for everybody watching. I want to give a shout out to my team, 4 Wide Motorsports. We got quite a few guys. I mention them pretty much every week I'm up here. And I can't thank them enough for the support they give me throughout the week practicing for these races. And of course my wife, she allows me to tonight she made dinner for me. She cleaned up dinner just so I can focus on this, and I love that. And so appreciate you guys. Thanks so much.
There we go, Ian. Thank you for the kind words. And as a wise man once told me, happy wife, happy life. So I will just leave it at that and let you celebrate this victory. Excited to see you back out on the racetrack for the season finale at Sebring in 1 week's time, man. Thanks for joining us.
Looking forward to it. Thanks.
And that right there was Ian Carney, the victor in the Ben GT3 category. Now, Charles, who would you like to have a chat with?
Well, let's talk with our pro, our beneficiary LMP2 winner, Tyler Gumet, and we'll bring Tyler in here. Tyler, it's been you and Greg basically the entire season battling from start to finish of these races, but then Greg had some trouble with the GT3 spun in front of him, basically crashed him out of the race, and so it was just basically you versus the traffic, I think, for most of this race tonight.
Yeah, I'm still catching my breath. I forgot to breathe at this track. It's wild.
Yeah, I was watching, like I said, I was telling during the broadcast, I was saying that I was watching a lot of practice, and the LMP2 seemed like they really couldn't get up to full speed except for that very last blast down to the final corner. You basically were doing a lot of short shifting and really kind of planning the traffic management out during the course of the race.
Yeah, it was definitely really tough setting up the cars for this track, and it was hard to balance a car because a lot of these braking zones are off camber and it just wanted to spin every time you came off the brake. So it was low speed and really hard to manage, but somehow made it through.
Yeah, absolutely. And so race done. So now we concentrate on the final race of the season at Sebring, and you can bring all that power of the LMP2 to bear on the track. So what are your thoughts about that?
Really excited. To get the championship win, I have to beat Greg. Otherwise, if we tie on wins and second places, and he's got me on bonus points. So it really just comes down to that. And we're both real good at Sebring and really looking forward to it. So it should be a great race.
Yeah, absolutely. We're looking forward to it as well. So we'll let you give any thanks that you have for tonight, and then we'll let you go and celebrate your victory.
Yeah, I just got to give a huge shout out to Operation Motorsport. Activated last week at Road Atlanta for my last race of my tenure as a beneficiary. So huge thanks to them for the last 2 years, and see what next year brings.
Well, okay. Well, on that point, I have another question. So let's talk about your activation. That means you were working with a team last weekend?
Yes.
Which team were you working with, if I can ask?
I was with Archangel Motorsports in the Michelin Pilot Challenge, and we finished 5th last Friday.
Very cool. Very cool. Congratulations to Archangel as well.
Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Tyler, and we'll look forward to hopefully hearing from you again next week.
Excellent. See you guys next week.
All right. Thank you.
And that right there was Tyler Gilmet. Always love some of the great stories that these drivers can share in the interviews. After the great races that we have in this series, Charles, it's been a blast thus far this season, but only one more left to go. Sebring in 1 week's time. Dealing with the bumps every single time we do a broadcast. There, you always mention the merchandise that they sell, telling all of us to respect the bumps.
Mm-hmm.
Is that going to be what the doctor orders in 1 week's time, or do you think there's going to be even more curveballs thrown those drivers' ways?
Well, no, I think you absolutely have to respect the bumps. So setup is going to be key to get a good setup around that track. Balancing the handling of the car versus how much downforce you have to put into it for some of those corners. And still there are some places there that you want to show some patience on your passes when we start talking about lap traffic. But Sebring, fantastic track. Love going there. Love watching racing there. So I'm really looking forward to our season finale next week.
And that is just one of the fantastic races that we have to look forward to here on Apex Racing TV. Between now and the end of the month, we've got some absolutely fantastic stuff, and we'll just run through the stuff that's coming up in the next few days, really between now and Monday, because we have got some awesome stuff to look forward to virtually every single day here on Apex. If you're in the mood for some prototype action, happy to check out round number 3 of the Apex Racing League Prototype Championship. That'll be at Road Atlanta. If you're in the mood for some GT3 action, then happy to check out round number 4 of the Evolution Sim Racing GT3 Championship at Interlagos. If you're in the mood for some Formula 4 action, happy to check out the Detroit Region SCCA Sim Racing Series presented by Superlap. Round number 2 that season is going to be at Road Atlanta. Kind of noticing a trend of some racetracks that are going to be holding some races here on Apex Racing TV this upcoming week. Here's a little bit of an oddball. One of the oddest cars in iRacing, the Radical SR10, going to be running at Navarra this upcoming week for week number 6, I should say, of the official Radical Esports Cup Series on iRacing. Charles and I, along with our producer Josh, just wrapped up a fantastic season of action from the Radical Sim Racing Americas Championship. So those SR10s always put on some pretty good races. Some GT3 action continues on Sunday with the Racing Unleashed GT3 Series round number 7 at Road Atlanta. Then we also have some Porsche Cup action at Imola this upcoming Monday, followed by some more Road Atlanta action from the Ricmatech World Challenge with some GTPs, LMP2s, and GT3 race cars set to hit the track for round number 4 of that season. But gives you more of a reason to hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so you never miss any of the action here on Apex Racing TV. It was an action-filled race tonight here at Sonoma, but the action ends now. So for myself, Ron Mullins, Charles Michelle joining me in the commentary booth, and Josh Wilkie doing a wonderful job working all the cameras in the virtual production hauler, I say thank you all so very much for watching. Have a great rest of your night, and we hope to see you all wherever it is in the not-too-distant future.
Are you struggling for consistency in your sim racing? Does your iRating look like a roller coaster? If so, we have good news for you. The way to get more consistent is to first understand what you're doing differently than the professionals. And VRS is the answer. With our competitive subscription, you will have the telemetry, setups, tutorials, and everything else you need to fully analyze your driving. Our data packs and the ability to compare your driving with the best in the world will show you exactly where to adjust your inputs, change your driving line, and shave seconds off of your lap times. And our powerful and precise Direct Force Pro wheelbase and precision pedals are being used by some of the world's best drivers. All these champions agree that VRS hardware is not just the best on the market, it's also priced well below the competition. So if you're looking to upgrade to direct drive and the best pedals in sim racing, VRS is your answer. If you want to get better, get faster, and make it happen sooner rather than later, you owe it to yourself to find out why so many people are switching to VRS. You'll be so glad that you did. Visit www.virtualracingschool.com and learn why the best use VRS.